Let's bring in our panel and start there. Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com, host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. Matt Bennett, former deputy assistant to the president for intergovernmental affairs under Bill Clinton and co-founder of Third Way. And Katie Pavlich, news editor at townhall.com. Guy, I think that there is some concern about the messaging, about how it's being talked about. If you go to the Sunday shows and the Commerce Secretary and Peter Navarro, and how the president talks about it, and how Scott Bessent talks about it, being flexible and doing deals. That's where I think there's a little opening.
There's Navarroism, there's Bessentism, and the president seems to have a foot in each camp. And the markets are gyrating every day depending on which of those two sides he seems to be leaning in favor of more.
It does seem like Bessent is ascendant.
Correct. And Bessent is leading these negotiations with some of these friendly countries. I think because the president calls it flexibility, I think people like to see that. But there's also the chaotic element. Is there any sense that things are going to calm down with stability moving forward, not just for the markets, but business owners, employers, that sort of thing? I think it would behoove the administration immensely to roll out fairly soon specific wins and trade deals with some of these low-hanging fruit countries, saying, look, this is the victory for the American people. We are not just willing to negotiate. We're doing it. We're getting things done. That might settle things down a lot.
Matt, politically, isn't there a side of this that benefits the president with steel workers, with union workers who do believe that the U.S. has been getting screwed around the world for a long time?
Yes, for now. There's no question that some of those union-type workers were in favor of these. But, boy, they haven't experienced the price hikes that will be coming unless they can figure out what to do about China. Right now, if that 145% tariff remains, almost everything you buy, no matter who you are, is going to skyrocket in price. And I don't think they're prepared to deal with the blowback from that. The other thing is, to Guy's point, this is really going to hurt a whole bunch of American businesses, people that are importing things from China, people that need parts from China and from other places around the world. So the pain from this hasn't been felt yet. I think the upside may be fleeting.
It does seem, Katie, like the China part and putting the screws to China is going to stick, or at least in the president's mind so far, it does. NVIDIA announcing to the manufacturer American-made AI supercomputers in the U.S. for the first time, working with its manufacturing partners to design and build factories that for the first time will produce NVIDIA AI supercomputers entirely in the U.S. That's ultimately the goal, to bring all those companies from China, wherever they are, to the U.S. shores.
Although there are no solid written sealed deals on the table yet, the Trump administration has proven the point that the world needs the American market, which is why you've seen 130-plus countries calling and saying we want to come up with some kind of negotiation and deal. You're also seeing the Treasury Department today issuing direct statements from Scott Bessent about these negotiations. He talked to the president of Argentina, for example, today, and they put out a readout on those calls talking about tariffs and the way forward. When the Treasury Secretary is talking to our allies like Japan, the UK, and Australia, who have had geopolitical issues with China, not just economic issues, that's a way to further push China into a corner as they come up with deals together, so that China, again, has to say, how much risk are we going to put to our own economy by playing this tariff game of chicken when we need the United States market? The world is clearly proving that they need it as well. And now we're really left with not a lot of options because the people we wanted to negotiate with are already signing deals with the United States.
The question is how long China can do this war. They import a ton of things for their own economy. Today, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, was talking with Vietnamese leaders. It seems like they're trying to figure out how to do this, but how long they can survive with this battle is really the question.
Yeah, it's not just a concern for the United States and the pain that we might feel here. It's very much true over there as well. And I think if you look at polling, there is a much more significant appetite among the American people to really stick it out in a fight with China. For a lot of geostrategic reasons, there is more willingness for that. And so, again, that goes to my point. I think if Trump and team can get friendly countries to the table and deals inked, that could really pressure further the Chinese and isolate them a little bit here in a way that might make them blink.
Meantime, speaking about blinking, the U.S. dealing directly with negotiations with Iran. The president weighed in on that today, the defense secretary over the weekend.
I think that might be tapping us a little. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. If we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it.
If we can't figure this out at the negotiating table, then there are other options, to include my department, to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear bomb. We hope we never get there.
Axios writes it this way: Iran nuclear talks expected to continue Saturday in Rome. A second round of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran expected to take place in Rome Saturday. The U.S. now wants to see Iran take steps in the near future to move its nuclear program further from weaponization. One of the sources said one such step could be downblending Iran's stockpile of near weapons-grade 60% enriched uranium, which could be enough for 6 nuclear bombs. You know, the question is how close they are, or maybe they're already there, Matt, and how close we were to giving the green light to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do these attacks.
Yeah, I mean, this is very dangerous part of the world. And the thing that I'm worried about is, first of all, there's no evidence that Donald Trump can get to yes with any of these guys. I mean, we heard in the first term about how he was going to stop the North Korean nuclear program. He did not. He didn't stop the Iranians then. And now the saber rattling's especially dangerous given what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Europe with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and the fact that our allies are no longer feeling very generous about helping us out. So I think this is a tough moment to be doing this.
Clearly, the Iranians, though, Katie, cheated on the JCPOA, that negotiation, on the nuclear side, and also during that time, with the extra money, used it to proliferate and embolden their terror proxies throughout the Middle East.
Well, the saber rattling has been coming from the Iranians for many, many years. And whether it's the Houthis still continuing to attack ships in the Red Sea, whether it was their funding of Hezbollah, the Iranians now are at the most vulnerable state that they've ever been because Hezbollah has now been degraded, because Hamas has been degraded, because the Houthis are getting taken out by the United States every single day. So if something were to happen, the United States would be successful. But as they have said over and over again, the president has said, we are willing to talk, but we're not willing to be fooled.
There's a lot of hot spots. I mean, it's not just tariff battles.
Yeah.
And, you know, to this point about allies not being as generous or eager to go, Israel's an exception. They'd be more than willing to take care of this business, I think.
Thanks, panel. Appreciate it.